The topic is when only I become important. When I say I, we are talking about this identity of me that needs to be noticed, that needs to be visible, that needs to be appreciated, that needs to be respected, rewarded, whatnot, whatnot. So that is where we are talking about an exaggerated intellectualism or exaggerated materialism or more material consciousness, where I want to be respected for the position I hold, the employees that I hire, including your house help and things like that. So the way I work with the house help, you got to come on time, you got to do all of this, you got to clean every nook and corner, whatever demands we have, because I pay you, and somewhere the life must serve me. This is so different from we belong to that life. We are together respecting each other, balancing each other out. Now I'm looking this more from us as parents' perspective and teachers' perspective, because children are imitating us, children are looking up to us. So when I start operating from I must be noticed, I must be respected, when I becomes more important than anything else, that's what children are going to learn. And somewhere you will begin noticing that I start distancing from life, where there is no participation in life, but there is something like a feeling that I'm privileged, and I keep myself at a distance. I don't like dirty bathrooms. I don't like public buses. I don't like this. I want this only. I cannot tolerate someone else. All is separating me. That's the tragedy. The separation is the tragedy. Now, somewhere it's kind of become this modern illness, where every one of us is struggling to be special, struggling to compete. Am I winning? I'm forcing my children also that you got to be somebody special, speak up for your rights. It's not about not speaking up, it's about how we speak, how we present ourselves. Am I looking at inclusiveness, or am I looking at something special only for me to be set aside? Typically, this comes with the affluence. That's why the material consciousness comes into picture, kind of situation in the modern times. But it's reduced, it's lesser when we go into economically not so stable groups. They still can sit out with whatever kind of neighbors they have fun, enjoy all the small things. Somewhere you see more of participation there. The more I can afford, the more I begin to distance myself. I need to begin asking, how am I supporting the life? How am I participating in the life? Am I taking responsibility? I is important, but we are looking at healthy I. A healthy I is something where I can serve, I am responsible, I can help, I participate in life, I am connected to people, where this kind of healthy I becomes uh, brings us compassion. It's more compassionate in nature, more inclusive in nature. I care for everybody around me. It's just not me, though I could be entitled for it, but I still um, take the entire community with me when I have this healthy I. It was interesting. We had some mangoes at home, and I was giving some of it to my house help. My mother was like, no, 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 don't worry. They don't value it. They don't care. They, don't give only one person, something like that. Basically, you have paid so much for the mangoes and don't just give it away. But then later, my house help was telling me someone gave her like 2 dozens and she gave to everybody in her neighborhood. One for each. She kept one for each in her family and gave away the rest because mangoes were expensive and people were not getting enough to enjoy them. That was her outlook. Share whatever we have. Otherwise, this individuality kind of collapses. I mean, we become kind of narcissist, avoid, distance. Um, so every moment of my day, if I'm thinking what's going on, am I doing something to become visible, to be noticed, to be thanked for, or am I doing it because I want to do it, I want to help, I want my experience with others to be a happy one. So when I'm operating out of this not so healthy I, the ego, of course there's healthy ego also. It wants to be noticed, it wants to be visible because it's operating out of some lack consciousness, something that I don't have that you have, something that I'm not blessed with that you are not, something I'm not lucky that uh, as much as you are. When that comparison comes in, there is kind of inner fear. There could be some unresolved pains. That's why we talk about this inner journey, healing, and all of that, because any of these unresolved pains, traumatic experiences, they don't ground me as much. There could be excessive mental stimulation. You step out of the house, there is noise, sound, you name it, there is pollution that is stimulating. My nervous system cannot handle it. It was not designed to handle so many inputs simultaneously coming to me. So I withdraw. When I withdraw, I don't participate. When I don't participate, there's fear that I've missed out on something, somebody has gone ahead of me. And this is just that cycle, perpetual cycle that we get into. And eventually, when we get into the later stage in life, 45 plus, 50 plus, we start feeling kind of emptiness. What have I done? There's nothing, anything more to chase anymore. Like people in my stage still not settled. We are kind of retired from life. There's nothing to chase. Now, what do I do? I remember my father telling after retired, I wasted all my life. I mean, he had provided for the family, extended family, and but all of that was discounted because there was this void within. Somewhere he doesn't feel that alignment with life. And I hear it from many people, and I'm also struggling with it myself. What do I do when I don't have anything tangible to offer? When I don't have this proper assignment of 5 days teacher training, 3 days of parenting session, it feels good to say, I have sessions, I'm busy. But the minute you don't have it, my ego begins to cry. What's happening? My identity is shattered. In this race of chasing something, I've forgotten my rhythms also. So, somewhere that ego is scared. It's like protect me, notice me, choose me, validate me, is screaming, and we are going after it. And that is where the I becomes important. I do anything to get attention. You can notice people around, begin noticing around actually. And how do they crave for attention? You walk by an elder in the family, don't wish them, not intentionally, but it happens when you see someone else, you're more excited, and they're like, oh, they didn't even show any respect. These days, children are gone, they're out of hands. So somewhere we are quick to judge. There is like thinking, willing, feeling that we talk about needs to be in balance. My thinking goes super fast. My feeling becomes weak. My willing to do activity, participate in life becomes very superficial. You see fragmented attention. My body, my mind makes list of things to do. My body doesn't cooperate. It's totally fragmented, and identity confusion. And we definitely don't want to be in that. We definitely don't want children to notice that. So somewhere children must experience taking responsibility just for the sake of it. There's this concept for a long time now, random acts of kindness. Will you just do something for somebody you don't even know? People may not take it. People may not take it. It is sad that we have come to that situation. Other day I was driving back home and it started pouring like crazy. And there was this family. The dad is running with a big suitcase and a child in one hand and the suitcase in the other hand, and they're running to shelter. It's like open highway. They got off at a bypass junction and they have to get to something close, and the wife is struggling to run behind with another bag. And I stopped to ask, do you need a ride? She refused, and for obvious reasons, with all the stories they hear. And I'm scared. Just before that, coincidentally, there was a guy waving hand on the highway, and it was raining, and I wanted to stop, but then again there is this thought, oh my God knows what kind of a person he could be. And to compensate that, I tried to stop and ask someone who was not asking for help, and they refused. And this is where we are in. And somewhere we got to begin building that trust. No, maybe not in picking somebody up from highway, but there definitely there's so many other ways. I am not even comfortable offering help. I'm like, what would they think? What if they refuse? What if they snap back at me? That attitude of service is modern days, it's kind of fading. So it's important for us to bring it back for the sake of children, bringing that rhythm, bringing that reverence, bringing that gratitude. And I don't have to do anything special. I don't have to teach children that. I just need to be. I make my healthy ego a priority. I'm available to serve. I'm wondering how I can help. I may not help also, but thought of trying to do something for people around you. So that's when it kind of becomes, relationships become more beautiful rather than becoming transactional. You give me this, I give you that. Learning becomes a joy, and learning is just not performance. And I'm not confused with my own self image, right? So paying attention to slowing down, to that silence, to be with the nature, to watch people, and to do the best I can at that moment will help us develop this healthy ego, which can balance out the influence of the environment on me, which is forcing me, making me more fragile in in nurturing this unhealthy ego. So think, slow down, pause, observe, and see what best you can do. Thank you.